The year was 2157, and humanity had just begun to colonize Mars. Earth's first deep space colony, Hope Station, orbited between Earth and Mars as a waypoint for travelers and traders. The Anderson family, Tom, Mary, and their 6-year-old son Jack, lived aboard Hope Station, where Tom worked as a maintenance engineer and Mary as a hydroponics specialist. Jack was a curious child who loved watching the stars through the station's observation deck. He would spend hours pressing his nose against the reinforced glass, counting the distant points of light and making up stories about alien civilizations. One ordinary Tuesday morning, the station's sensors detected an unknown object approaching at incredible speed. The station commander ordered everyone to remain calm as the massive ship, nearly 10 times the size of Hope Station, came into view. Its sleek, metallic surface reflected the sun's rays, creating an almost ethereal glow. The ship belonged to the Galactic Empire, a vast confederation of alien species that had ruled most of the known galaxy for millennia. They had finally discovered Earth and its colonies, and this was their first contact vessel. Initial communications were peaceful. The Empire's representatives, tall beings with smooth gray skin and large eyes, expressed interest in diplomatic relations. They requested permission to board Hope Station for preliminary talks. Tom and Mary, like most of the station's crew, watched from designated areas as the alien diplomats walked through the corridors. Jack, however, had snuck away from the station's daycare. His natural curiosity drew him toward the visiting aliens. The diplomatic party stopped when they saw Jack. In their culture, children were considered sacred, and the sight of a human child approaching them with such openness sparked intense interest. The lead diplomat reached out a hand in greeting. What happened next would change the course of human history forever. One of the Empire's security officers, trained to react to any potential threat, misinterpreted Jack's quick movement toward the diplomats. The officer activated his personal defense field, a standard precaution in their culture. But the defense field wasn't calibrated for human physiology. The energy pulse that was meant to simply repel a threat instead stopped Jack's heart instantly. He collapsed in front of his horrified parents, who had just rounded the corner looking for him. The station erupted into chaos. The Empire's diplomats, realizing the gravity of their mistake, quickly retreated to their ship. They sent messages of apology and offers of reparation, explaining that it was a tragic accident due to technological incompatibility. They didn't understand that they had just committed humanity's ultimate taboo, the killing of a child. As news of the incident spread across Earth and Mars, a deep, cold rage began to build. The death of Jack Anderson became more than a tragedy, it became a symbol of humanity's vulnerability in a galaxy that had suddenly become much more dangerous. Earth's response was swift and unanimous. Within 24 hours, every nation on the planet had signed the Anderson Accord, named after the fallen child. The message to the Galactic Empire was clear: they had made a terrible mistake. They had revealed themselves not as advanced benefactors, but as careless giants who couldn't be trusted with humanity's future. The final line of the accord read, "The death of Jack Anderson will not go unanswered." Earth stands united in this declaration of war against the Galactic Empire. They will learn that humanity protects its own. And so began humanity's first interstellar war, sparked by a tragic misunderstanding and a parent's grief. The Empire was about to learn a harsh lesson about human nature: we might be small, but we fight with the fury of 1,000 suns when our children are threatened. The Empire had expected humanity to cower, to beg for mercy, or at least to attempt further negotiations. They were wrong. Within a week of Jack Anderson's death, humanity launched its first strike, using a tactic that would become known as the Ghost Protocol. Earth's military strategists had realized something crucial: the Empire's massive ships, while powerful, relied heavily on advanced sensor systems. These sensors operated on principles that humanity's scientists had barely begun to understand. But understanding wasn't necessary for exploitation. The first attack came from 20 small Earth vessels, each barely larger than a pre-war cargo shuttle. The Empire's grand warship, the Eternal Vigilance, detected them approaching their outer defense perimeter near Jupiter. The ship's commander ordered warning shots, following standard protocol for dealing with primitive species. But the Earth ships didn't react as expected. Instead of fleeing or attempting to fight back, they simply vanished. The Empire's sensors showed nothing but empty space where 20 ships had been moments before. The commander ordered a full sensor sweep, believing it to be a malfunction. That was exactly what humanity had counted on. While the Empire's sensors were occupied with the complex sweep pattern, the real attack began. The ghost ships had been decoys, broadcasting false signals that matched the sensor profile of actual vessels. The real Earth ships had been running silent, hidden in the decoy sensor shadows. These vessels carried what humanity called solar bombs, devices that mimicked the electromagnetic pulse of a solar flare, but concentrated into a tight beam. When they detonated, the Empire's shields, calibrated to stop physical projectiles and energy weapons, were useless against what their systems interpreted as a natural phenomenon. The Eternal Vigilance, pride of the Empire's fleet, went dark. Its crew, accustomed to relying on advanced technology, found themselves aboard a powerless hulk of metal floating in space. The ship's emergency systems eventually came online, but by then, Earth's forces had already moved on to their next targets. This pattern repeated across the solar system. The Empire's ships, despite their overwhelming technological superiority, found themselves repeatedly ambushed by an enemy they couldn't reliably detect. Humanity had turned its own technological inferiority into an advantage. Their primitive systems were often invisible to the Empire's advanced sensors. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source: video games. A group of military strategists had recruited professional gamers to analyze the Empire's battle patterns. These gamers, experienced in identifying and exploiting predictable AI behaviors, noticed that the Empire's tactical responses followed strict protocols that could be manipulated. Using this insight, Earth's forces began orchestrating complex traps. They would present the Empire's ships with specific scenarios that would trigger predictable responses, then capitalize on those responses with devastating effect. The Empire's commanders, bound by millennia of military doctrine, found themselves outmaneuvered by strategies that seemed to defy conventional military logic. Admiral Bill Carter, speaking to the United Earth Council, summed it up best: "The Empire expects us to fight like a primitive species grasping at advanced technology. Instead, we're fighting like humans, adaptable, unpredictable, and willing to break every rule of engagement they thought they knew." The war's first month ended with humanity holding its own, much to the Empire's shock. But everyone knew this was just the beginning. The Empire controlled thousands of worlds, and once they recovered from their initial surprise, they would bring their full might to bear. Earth's leaders began implementing the next phase of their plan. If humanity couldn't match the Empire's technology, they would have to change the nature of warfare itself. As research teams worked tirelessly to reverse-engineer captured Empire technology, military strategists planned increasingly daring operations. The Empire had killed a human child. In response, humanity would teach them the meaning of fear. Not with overwhelming force or superior technology, but with the one advantage humans had always possessed: the ability to innovate in the face of impossible odds. The real war was about to begin. 3 months into the war, humanity faced a crucial problem. While guerrilla tactics and clever strategies had kept Earth safe, they weren't enough to win the war. The Empire's ships still possessed shields that made them nearly invincible to direct attacks. That changed when Dr. Anna Wells made a discovery that would reshape the battlefield. Dr. Wells had been studying the defense field that had killed young Jack Anderson. She noticed something peculiar: the field hadn't just stopped Jack's heart, it had interfered with all electrical activity in his body. This observation led to a breakthrough that would become known as the Wells Principle. Their shields don't just block attacks, she explained to military leadership. They actively redirect energy. That's why they're so effective against conventional weapons. But what if we could make them redirect too much? The concept was brilliant in its simplicity. Instead of trying to break through the Empire's shields, humanity would turn them into weapons against their own ships. The military named this new weapon the feedback cascade. The first test came during the Battle of Titan. An Empire dreadnought, the Star Sovereign, approached Saturn's largest moon with a fleet of support ships. Earth's defenders launched what appeared to be a standard missile barrage. The Empire's commanders didn't even bother to take evasive action, their shields had always handled such primitive attacks easily. But these missiles were different. When they impacted the shields, they created a resonance effect. Each hit amplified the shield's energy instead of being deflected. Within seconds, the Star Sovereign's shields began to glow with unusual intensity. The Empire's engineers, following their protocols, diverted more power to stabilize them. That was exactly what humanity had counted on. The additional power only accelerated the cascade effect. The ship's shields collapsed inward, releasing all their stored energy directly into the vessel's hull. The mighty Star Sovereign, pride of the Empire's fleet, tore itself apart from the inside out. The sight of their flagship destroying itself sent shock waves through the Empire's forces. For the first time in their long history, their supposedly impenetrable defense technology had become a liability. But humanity didn't stop there. Teams of engineers, working around the clock, began developing more innovations. They created phase bombs that could briefly slip through shields by matching their frequency. They designed mirrored drones that could reflect the Empire's own weapon fire back at them. Each innovation forced the Empire to adapt, and each adaptation created new vulnerabilities for humanity to exploit. The Empire's response was to unleash their planet-killer weapons, massive ships capable of destroying entire worlds. But even these proved vulnerable to human ingenuity. A team led by Captain Mike Russell discovered that the massive energy requirements of these weapons made them especially susceptible to the feedback cascade effect. When the Empire's first planet killer appeared near Mars, ready to make an example of humanity's first colony, it found itself trapped in a web of carefully placed resonator satellites. The mighty vessel's attempt to fire its main weapon triggered a chain reaction that reduced it to scattered atoms in the void of space. But the true genius of humanity's technological revolution wasn't in any single weapon or tactic. It was in how quickly they could adapt and improve their designs. While the Empire's technology had remained largely unchanged for centuries, human innovations evolved daily. Tom Anderson, who had lost his son to the Empire's technology, now led a team developing safety systems to protect future generations. "They killed my boy with their advanced technology," he would say. "Now we're showing them what happens when humans decide to advance." As the war entered its fourth month, the Empire faced an uncomfortable truth: the primitive species they had dismissed was now dismantling their technological advantages one by one. But even as humanity celebrated these victories, their leaders knew the Empire would not accept defeat easily. The next phase of the war would require more than clever technology. It would demand the one resource humanity had in endless supply: the determination to protect their own, no matter the cost. 6 months into the war, the Empire launched what they called the Final Solution, a massive fleet of 10,000 ships converging on the solar system. They expected to end the human resistance in one decisive blow. Instead, they walked into humanity's greatest trap. The battle began in the Kuiper Belt, far from Earth. The Empire's fleet moved in perfect formation, their ships arranged in the time-tested pattern that had conquered 1,000 worlds. But humanity had studied these patterns, learned their weaknesses, and prepared accordingly. Admiral Carter's voice crackled through the comm systems of every human vessel: "Remember Jack Anderson. Remember why we fight. Execute Operation Thunderstorm." With those words, the largest space battle in human history began. The first wave seemed like suicide, hundreds of small, unmanned ships rushing directly at the Empire's fleet. The Empire's commanders laughed at such a primitive tactic. Their laughter died when the ships suddenly split apart, revealing themselves as carrier vessels filled with millions of tiny drones. These drones, each no bigger than a coffee cup, carried simplified versions of the feedback cascade technology. They swarmed around Empire ships like angry bees, disrupting shield harmonics and creating gaps in their defenses. The Empire's mighty vessels found themselves fighting opponents too small to target effectively. But this was just the beginning. From behind Jupiter's moons emerged humanity's true strike force. Ships equipped with the latest phase weapons slipped through the gaps created by the drone swarm. The Empire's neat formations dissolved into chaos as they tried to fight enemies that seemed to appear and disappear at will. Captain Lisa Brown led the third phase of the attack. Her task force had spent weeks hiding in the rings of Saturn, their ships disguised as ordinary ice chunks. Now they activated their engines simultaneously, turning the entire ring into what appeared to be a massive natural disaster. The Empire's fleet, already struggling with the drone swarm and phase attacks, now had to deal with what their sensors reported as a planetary ring system tearing itself apart. The battle raged for 3 days. The Empire's commanders tried to adapt, but each adaptation was met with a new human tactic. When they spread out their formations to minimize drone swarm damage, hidden human strike teams would pick off isolated ships. When they clustered together for protection, they made themselves perfect targets for the new resonator weapons. On the battle's final day, humanity unveiled their masterpiece. The thousands of destroyed Empire ships had left a massive debris field. Hidden among the debris were special transmitters that activated simultaneously, creating a massive energy web that trapped the remaining Empire vessels in a field of their own broken technology. Admiral Carter's message to the trapped Empire fleet was brief: "You killed one of our children. We could destroy your entire fleet now. But unlike you, we don't believe in needless death. Surrender, and live to learn from this defeat." The Empire's response came an hour later, their first surrender in 10,000 years of expansion. But even as human forces secured their victory, intelligence reports brought disturbing news. The Empire's defeat had created a power vacuum, and some of their subject species were breaking away, forming rival factions that might prove even more dangerous. Mary Anderson, watching the battle's aftermath from Hope Station where her son had died, wrote in her diary, "They thought we would be easy to conquer because we were young. They didn't understand that youth means we haven't learned to accept limitations. Every time they told us something was impossible, we proved them wrong." As humanity celebrated their greatest victory, their leaders prepared for the next phase of the war. The Empire's main fleet was defeated, but their vast territory contained countless more ships and resources. More importantly, the power struggle beginning in their conquered territories threatened to turn an already devastating war into something far more complex. Earth's tactical analysts had a saying: "The Empire fights like they want to win a war. Humanity fights like we want to protect our children." That difference would become even more crucial as the conflict entered its next, more dangerous phase. The Empire's defeat at the hands of humanity triggered a chain reaction that no one had anticipated. Like a mighty tree struck by lightning, the Empire began to splinter from within. The news spread across 1,000 worlds: the undefeated had been defeated, the invincible proved vincible, all because they had killed a human child. On the Empire's capital world, the High Council gathered in their golden chamber for the first time since the war began. The massive room, designed to showcase the Empire's power and glory, now felt like a tomb. Empty seats marked the spaces where council members had once sat, their territories now in open rebellion. Intelligence reports reached Earth through the new network of allies humanity had gained. The Empire's subject species, many enslaved for generations, saw humanity's victory as a sign. If humans could defeat the Empire, perhaps they could win their freedom too. But this created a new problem, one that threatened to turn an interstellar war into a galaxy-wide catastrophe. The Empire's vast arsenals of planet-killer weapons were now up for grabs. Rebel factions fought each other for control of military installations. Former slave species, their chains broken, sought revenge against their former masters. The Empire's mighty fleet, once united, split into competing armadas as military commanders chose sides. Earth's War Council faced a difficult decision. They had wanted justice for Jack Anderson, but they hadn't intended to destroy galactic civilization itself. General Robert Wayne voiced what many were thinking: we threw a stone into a pond, expecting ripples. Instead, we've created a tsunami. Humanity's response came in two parts. First, they launched Operation Lighthouse, a series of rapid strikes against known planet-killer weapons storage facilities. Special Forces teams, using their now-perfected stealth technology, infiltrated and disabled these weapons before they could fall into dangerous hands. The second part was more controversial. Earth reached out to moderate factions within the Empire, offering an alliance. The same technology they had used to defeat the Empire could help stabilize the region and prevent further bloodshed. Many questioned this decision, but Mary Anderson's public support carried immense weight. "My son's death should bring change," she said, "not chaos." The Empire's high command, faced with total collapse, finally acknowledged reality. They had spent too long ruling through fear and technology. Humanity had proved that neither was enough. In a historic broadcast, the High Commander himself spoke directly to Earth's leaders. "We have ruled the stars for 10,000 years, he said, his translator struggling to convey the emotion in his voice. "We thought this gave us the right to judge all other species. The death of the human child Jack Anderson showed us our error. Not in its occurrence, tragic as it was, but in how humanity responded. You fought not for vengeance, but for justice. Not for conquest, but for protection." The negotiations that followed would reshape galactic society. The Empire would transform into a confederation of equal species, with humanity helping to guide the transition. Their advanced technology would be shared, but with safeguards to prevent its misuse. Most importantly, a new Galactic Council would be formed, with its first law being the Protection of Innocence Decree, ensuring that no child, of any species, would ever again die from cultural misunderstanding. Tom Anderson, watching the Empire's surrender broadcast from the same observation deck where his son had once watched the stars, felt a complex mix of emotions. The war had brought justice for Jack, but at a tremendous cost. Yet as he looked out at the stars, he saw something his son had always imagined: a galaxy of possibilities, where different species could learn from each other instead of fighting. The Empire had fallen, but from its ashes, something new would rise. Humanity's first war among the stars had proven not just their military prowess, but their capacity for both justice and mercy. The galaxy would never be the same, and perhaps that was exactly what it needed. As the Empire transformed into a confederation, pockets of resistance remained. Hardline military commanders refused to accept change, using their advanced weapons to carve out territories of fear. Newly freed species fought ancient blood feuds. The galaxy teetered on the edge of chaos. Humanity's final challenge wasn't winning the war, it was winning the peace. Earth's leaders gathered in the newly constructed Unity Station, built at the exact spot where Hope Station had once floated. The station's heart was a memorial chamber, its walls displaying holographic images of Jack Anderson playing among the stars. It served as a reminder of why the war began, and why the peace must succeed. Dr. Wells, the scientist who had helped humanity break the Empire's shields, presented a radical proposal. "We've been fighting technology with technology," she said. "But humanity's true strength isn't in our weapons. It's in our ability to connect, to empathize, to build communities even with those who were once our enemies." Operation Starbridge launched a month later. Instead of warships, Earth sent cultural exchange vessels to every corner of former Empire space. These ships carried teachers, artists, doctors, and children. Yes, children, volunteers who would help show the galaxy that youth meant hope, not vulnerability. The hardline militants weren't impressed at first. They prepared to attack these seemingly defenseless vessels. But each cultural ship carried a surprise, modified versions of the resonator satellites that had won the great battle. Any aggressive action would result in immediate defensive feedback, leaving attackers helpless but unharmed. Young Tim Baker, age 8, made first contact with a group of former Empire military children on a distant space station. The adults watched nervously as human and alien children discovered something profound: play is universal. Soon, the station echoed with sounds of laughter in multiple languages. Mary Anderson led a different kind of mission. She traveled to worlds torn by revenge and hatred, sharing her story. "I lost my child to the Empire's arrogance," she would say. "I could have lost myself to hatred. Instead, I chose to fight for a future where no mother, of any species, would feel my pain." The breakthrough came on a mining world where former slaves had captured their previous masters. They planned to execute them in revenge. But when Mary showed them pictures of Jack, told them of his dreams of meeting alien friends, something changed. The executions were cancelled. Former masters and slaves began the hard work of reconciliation. Earth's diplomatic corps learned to combine technology with psychology. They created empathy rooms, using modified shield technology, allowing different species to safely experience each other's environments and perspectives. Former enemies learned what it felt like to walk in each other's gravity, breathe each other's air, face each other's challenges. Tom Anderson found his calling in this new era. He led a team developing safety protocols for cross-species interaction, ensuring no other family would suffer his loss. The defense field that had killed Jack was redesigned into a universal translation field, helping different species communicate not just words, but feelings. The resistance hardliners found themselves facing an enemy they couldn't fight: positive change. Their own people, seeing the benefits of cooperation, began turning away from violence. One by one, the militant holdouts surrendered, not to superior firepower, but to the promise of a better future. 1 year after Jack's death, representatives from every known species gathered at Unity Station. They signed the Galactic Concordat, establishing not just peace but true cooperation between all peoples. The first article referenced the Anderson Principle: the strength of a civilization is measured not by its ability to wage war, but by its commitment to protect all children, of all species. As the ceremony ended, a new memorial was unveiled. It showed a human child and an Empire child playing together among holographic stars. Below it, a simple inscription read, "In memory of Jack Anderson, whose tragic death taught the galaxy that our differences are small compared to our shared hope for the future." The war that began with a child's death would end with a child's legacy, a galaxy where different species looked at each other and saw not enemies, but fellow travelers among the stars. 10 years after Jack Anderson's death, the galaxy had changed beyond recognition. Unity Station had grown into Unity Hub, the center of interstellar cooperation and home to the Galactic Council. Ships from 1,000 worlds docked at its ports, their crews mixing freely in its corridors. The sound of children laughing, human and alien alike, echoed through its halls. Tom and Mary Anderson stood at their usual spot on the observation deck, watching the steady flow of traffic through the star gates. They had made this pilgrimage every year on the anniversary of Jack's death. But this year was different. This year, they weren't alone. Behind them stood representatives from every known species, gathered for the inauguration of the Jack Anderson Academy. The school would train children from across the galaxy in diplomacy, cultural understanding, and the responsible use of technology. Its mission: to ensure that the next generation would build bridges, not barriers. Dr. Wells, now head of the Galactic Science Council, presented her latest innovation. The defense field that had once taken Jack's life had been completely transformed. The new Anderson field created a protective bubble that automatically adjusted to any species' biology, allowing safe interaction between different forms of life. It would be standard equipment on every ship and station. The former Empire's High Commander, now serving as an advisor to the Galactic Council, rose to speak. Age had softened his features, but not his voice. A decade ago, we thought ourselves masters of the galaxy. We measured civilization by the power of our weapons and the reach of our authority. A human child named Jack Anderson proved us wrong. His death showed us that true civilization is measured by how we protect our most vulnerable. The ceremony reached its peak with the activation of the Stellar Memorial. Using advanced holographic technology, it transformed the space above Unity Hub into a vast stellar nursery, a region where new stars were being born. Each point of light represented a child saved by the Anderson protocols, the safety measures developed in Jack's memory. Mary Anderson stepped forward, her voice steady as she addressed the gathered species. 10 years ago, I lost my son to fear and misunderstanding. Today, I see his dream coming true. He always imagined a galaxy where different beings could be friends, where we could learn from each other instead of fearing each other. Look around you, that's exactly what we've built. The impact was measurable. Trade between worlds had increased 1,000-fold. Scientific cooperation had led to breakthroughs in medicine, environmental protection, and space travel. The former Empire's technology, combined with human innovation and the unique perspectives of other species, had created solutions to problems that had once seemed insurmountable. But the greatest change was in the children. The first graduating class of the Unity Hub school system included humans, former Empire species, and representatives from worlds that had once been mortal enemies. These young beings had grown up together, learning each other's languages, understanding each other's cultures, and forming bonds that transcended species. Tom Anderson watched as a group of children played in the memorial garden. A human girl was teaching an Empire child how to play hopscotch, while others joined in, adapting the game to their various forms of movement. It was exactly the kind of scene Jack would have loved. The final act of the ceremony was the launch of the Jack Anderson, humanity's first long-range exploration vessel. Its mission was to seek out new civilizations, not for conquest or control, but for friendship and mutual understanding. Its crew was multi-species, its technology a blend of all known cultures, its purpose entirely peaceful. As the ship departed, its lights twinkling among the stars, Mary squeezed Tom's hand. Jack would be proud, she said. His death sparked a war, but his memory built a peace that will outlast all of us. The stars seemed to shine brighter that night, as if reflecting the hope that had risen from tragedy. The galaxy had learned its lesson. The future belonged not to those who wielded the greatest power, but to those who showed the greatest compassion. Jack Anderson, the boy who dreamed of alien friends, had changed the universe forever.